Hi friends, how you doing today? Welcome to Cartoons, Researchers and Educators. And today we have someone that is absolutely fantastic. Someone that, I don't know very well how to introduce him just because, his curriculum, I wouldn't have enough time to read it, in 1 hour or two maybe. But I'm going to do something for you. I'm just going to show, and I'm not going to say the name yet, even though it's there. But what if I show you this absolutely beauty of book that, is for everyone who adores animation, and especially for anyone who loves Snow White and Disney's stories, is like I was saying before, kind of a Bible. So with us today, we have the author of this amazing book, J.B. Kaufman. How you doing, sir? Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. It's nice to be here. This is a real pleasure.
All right, fantastic. So for us, it's a big pleasure having you, and especially talking about this book and all the stories that I know you are aware about Snow White, because you are like a big hole full of information, and I hope that you can share that information with all our viewers, because I think one of the main goals of our program is to share information, so the information doesn't get contained in one group of people who are lucky enough to buy the books or things like that, but it can be spread and we can educate more regarding, what it is actually animation and its art. So I would like to start talking from the beginning. Let's start in chronological order. And let's talk about Snow White. Okay, can you tell us a little bit about Snow White in the context of the Grimm brothers? What would you like to tell us?
Well, we could talk all day just about that. The fact is that the story of Snow White was around for literally hundreds of years before the Grimm brothers came along. It's a story that begins with an oral tradition, and it started in multiple cultures at the same time. So it had already existed. We know it had existed even in written form for almost 200 years before the Grimm brothers came along. And so it was a real tradition. By the time they wrote their book, what they were really doing was collecting folk tales and recording them for posterity, because they wanted to preserve that aspect of their country's culture. And so it wasn't that they originated the story of Snow White. It was that they were trying to preserve that story as it existed then in oral tradition, so that future generations would be able to remember it.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. Actually, we are talking now about fairy tales, but at the time of the Grimm brothers and even before, those stories were not for kids, actually. They were for adults. And because many of them were quite scary.
Yeah, oh yeah, there's some pretty rough content in those stories. And just for example, I think the most famous example of that in their version of Snow White is that when Snow White marries the prince at the end, the wicked stepmother is brought in, and she's forced to dance in red hot iron shoes until she falls over dead. That's just a sample of the world that the Grimm brothers were living in. So yes, these stories were related to children, but they're not what we think of as happy little fluffy fairy tales. They had some pretty rough content.
Oh yeah, they did. Actually, I'm just thinking moving a little forward, but I want to stay, with that what we are talking about the Grimm brothers. I remember reading, that when Snow White was released in UK, there was an ad saying that only people 16 years older, or, with some company of 16 years older can watch the movie because it was kind of scary in some aspects. So that tells you, even though, how much, the studio tried to make it sweet and make it nicer and not that aggressive, if you wish, he allowed me this word, and still, it was hard, right? It's interesting.
That, that's right. I think a lot of people then and now make the mistake of thinking that animated cartoons were just made for children. Um, they were suitable for children, even though, as you say, some authorities in the UK didn't think so. But they weren't made strictly for young audiences. At the time, RKO Radio, which was Walt Disney's distributor at the time, they kept track of the admissions, and they said that adults in the audience outnumbered children by 2 to 1.
Wow.
So it wasn't just something for the kiddies. This really was for all ages.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. So tell me a little bit of what do you think, what was the main reason why Walt Disney decided this is the first feature film that we are going to be producing in the studio?
Well, what we know is basically what the clues that he left for us, and that is that he considered the story from every angle, and he thought that it was a story that had everything. He had of course heard the story growing up. He had seen the famous Marguerite Clark version of the story, her film that was made in 1916, and so he had kind of a sentimental attachment to it because of that. But yeah, he said that this was a story that had everything. You had comedy, you had romance, you had suspense, and it just had everything going for it that would appeal to an audience, and material that played to his studio's strengths for character animation.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. It's fabulous, how some stuff, some images that we keep from our childhood, will accompany us the rest of our lives, right? And then will be together with us. So let's talk a little bit about the adaptation that the studio did of the story of the Green Brothers. In a sense of, do you think it would have been better to keep some more of the aggression part, in a sense of more like the real story, original story? In the original story in the Green Brothers, there are 3 temptations for Snow White, and in the Disney version we only have the apple temptation, and all that. So what do you think about the adaptation from the book to the script?
Well, as far as that aspect of it is concerned, I think that's a good example of Disney's and his associates' skills as filmmakers. They recognized that the pacing of a film was all important in entertaining an audience, and Walt was always pushing to tighten the story up and not have it lag any more than necessary. That doesn't mean there were never any quiet passages. On the contrary, there were some beautiful quiet passages, but he didn't ever want the story to drag. He didn't want the audience to get bored. And so that was the reason why some of that kind of material got conflated, so that you wouldn't have a phenomenon like that. I think a lot of people don't recognize just how sophisticated a job of filmmaking Snow White is. It's couched in this kind of sunny fairy tale simplicity, which is great, but that helps to camouflage just how sophisticated the storytelling is and the cinematic technique. And what you're talking about there, conflating those 3 elements into just one in the film, that's an example of that. It's tightening the story and making the pacing more effective as you see the film on the screen.
Yeah, absolutely. I also think that it was important, the presence of the seventh dwarf, because, in the Grimm story, basically they didn't even have a name. They were just numbers. And Disney was so detailed to give name to each of them, which I think allows, the spectator to feel more attached to that particular, Duppy or Doc or any of them, right? So I think that was a very smart move by the studio.
Exactly. Yes. And that's one of the reasons why this story was so well adapted to Walt's purposes. Um, a lot of people don't recognize that one of the Disney Studio's big contributions to art in the 1930s was the development of personality animation. They did a lot of other great things. They pioneered in the use of Technicolor in cartoons. They pioneered in a lot of technical aspects. But the big thing that Walt really focused on, that he was really proud of, was they established this craft of personality animation, which is conveying the personality of a character through the way the character moves. And that's a very, very difficult craft to master. And they pretty much developed that art in the course of the 1930s. And so the Seven Dwarfs were just made to order for an exercise in personality animation, because you've got 7 characters who are all about the same height, who mostly have similar appearances. But the minute you see one of them on the screen, you want to know which one that is.
Yes.
And it's a tribute to the skills of the animators to convey that just through the acting that each character does.
Yeah, and I think that he created these characters so deeply, that if I'm not wrong, my understanding was that the studio at the beginning, when they were planning Fantasia, they even thought to use the Seven Dwarfs, especially, Dorothy, to be part and be the one who actually be in the place of Mickey Mouse on the Apprentice, right? And so, but then, later they say no. So, I mean, and it also has a common characteristic, with Fantasia, in a sense that the clothing of Dopey, is so big, and the movements are so, it's very good. You have to look. This is something that I find, maybe I'm wrong, but tell me your opinion, that in each movie of Disney, it doesn't matter if you watch it 100 times, you will find those small little details that will tell you something about the story, and will tell you something even more importantly about the studio, about the people who was behind the scenes, creating the film.
Absolutely. And again, we all know that Walt Disney was a genius, but
Absolutely.
one of the ways that he manifested that genius was that he surrounded himself with people who really were extraordinarily talented, and he had an eye for what their talents were and how their talents could go into making the film that much better, or more appealing, or more interesting. And so he had in the story department, there were some brilliant minds in there who could invest these stories with those extra touches of wit or sophistication or whatever the story called for.
Yeah, I agree with you, because the story itself is quite sophisticated. We cannot forget about that. It's exactly what you said before. It has love, it has tension, it has fun, it has, characters that are absolutely amazing. But let me ask you about which one is your favorite character of the movie.
Oh boy, I don't I don't know that I have a favorite, because all of the characters are really appealing. I can tell you that my mother saw Snow White when she was very young, and she really remembered Grumpy. She had a real affection for Grumpy. So in honor of her, I guess if I have to pick just one of the dwarfs, I'll pick Grumpy.
Oh, there you go. I have to acknowledge that my favorite one is the witch. I mean, I think the witch itself, when she became an old lady, when she acts like the queen and all that kind of stuff, I think that is probably one of the strongest characters I have ever seen in one movie. Just her expression,
She,
just her face tells you who she is, right?
that's exactly right. And we were talking about personality animation a few minutes ago. Um, the witch is a really good example of that because when she transforms from the Wicked Queen into that witch characterization, at that point she's animated by an artist named Norm Ferguson, who was one of the real pioneers of personality animation. I always think that when you watch some of Ferguson's animation, you can always tell that it's his work by watching the eyes of the character. The eyes tell you everything. He was the guy who developed Pluto, Mickey's dog, into a
Oh,
major character,
there you go, sir.
and
Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
and conveyed a lot of what Pluto was thinking by his eyes, by the expressions in his eyes. And of course, the witch is a very different character, but I think you can really see Ferguson's hand in the way she conveys things through her expressions.
That's right. That's
Uh,
right. Her eyes, and somehow, I still have an image that actually we will see later on, in the second part of the program when, the witch has her open arms, and is looking to the spectator like saying, kill this girl and bring me, the body and all that, the parts of the body so I can eat them. And it's overwhelming. It is overwhelming because just when one single drawing, these people was able to tell a story. This is what I think. This is the ability of these
that's
people.
that's right.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right. And in fact, there's a little technical touch there that I always think is really clever. At the end of one sequence, when you're about to fade out and then go to a different part of the story,
Mm-hmm.
um, you fade out on the witch, but she's glaring right at the camera, and they did it with a double exposure. So the eyes are exposed differently from the rest of the picture. The rest of it starts to fade out, but those glowing eyes are still there.
I still
Just
looking at you.
just for a couple of seconds, and then that fades out too.
Yeah,
It's
well,
it's very subtle, but that's the kind of attention to detail that they put into the film.
okay, let's talk a little bit about how these I was gonna call crazy, but it's not crazy. That Walt Disney was a genius. So I don't know if it's the right word to use, crazy, but when he decided, okay, I'm gonna make this movie, right? He was interested, when he traveled to Europe in 35, and he saw how many watches, they had of several Mickey Mouse shorts in theaters in
Mhm.
Europe. And I think that just proved how genius he was. When no one thought that, more than 7 minutes will be a good idea, he came back to the United States and said, okay, this is what we're going to do. We are going to do a feature film.
That's right. And he had been thinking about it before that trip.
Yes.
But yeah, when he saw theaters that were showing complete programs of Disney shorts back to back, I think that helped convince him that that was the way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And just think that we are talking about 1937 when this movie was released. And actually today, because we are pre-recording this video since, the Christmas are in the corner, it's a fantastic day. Do you want to mention why?
Yes, the day that we are recording this is the 84th anniversary of the opening night
E-
of Snow White at the
Exactly.
Carthay Circle in Hollywood.
Exactly. What a fantastic day. Who I wish, I can have a time travel and go back there and just to see, just to watch, what was happening, because it must be marvelous, for them. Now, tell me this story that he comes to the studio and say, we are gonna do a movie with these characteristics, when he put everyone in the sound studio and says, we are going to be making a movie about this.
That's one of the really interesting aspects of this story, because that particular story has been told so many times. The making of the film is extraordinarily well documented. I can tell you that when I was researching the book, it took years to do the research, just because there's such a mountain of material there. They documented everything. And so it was a challenge just to get on top of that mountain of information and try to get a good perspective on it. But the one thing that wasn't documented well was that first night. And we know what the date was and everything. We know that he did call everybody together on the soundstage, but all we have is about a page of notes. Nobody took down in detail what he was saying. Wow. And after that happened, you had Ken Anderson and other people for years and years afterward telling the story that Walt called them all together and told the whole story and did it so hypnotically that he inspired everybody, and he already had the whole thing worked out in his head. It makes a great story, but it can't be literally true, because his story department continued to work on this for a good 2 years after that. It wasn't all completely laid out in his head. There were lots and lots and lots and lots of story conferences, and even some scenes that were some sequences that were made for the film, and then he changed his mind and they took them out. So the story was still infinitely changeable after that night. But there was something about his presentation that night that so inspired his staff that they did stick to it and stick with him through the 4 years that it took. Yes. to finish this film. And it's a tantalizing thing to speculate on exactly what happened. And I find that really intriguing, that with all the details that we know about the making of the film, that's one thing that we don't completely know.
Wow, it's a kind of a urban legend kind of thing, but with some traces of truth. Yeah.
It is, and that became part of the legend, and which it's part of our culture, and we have to accept that. But as an historian, you want to be as accurate as you can.
Absolutely.
And one of the great things about this film is that you don't have to make things up. You don't have to fictionalize anything. It is an amazing accomplishment, even if you just measure by the things that we know and have documented really happened. So there's no need to make things up. It's an outstanding achievement, no matter how you look at it.
Oh, no, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. Now, tell me something, because, I think a big part of the genius of Walt relies on something that sometimes we forget about, and it's his brother Roy. Because, I think it's difficult to conceive what Walt was able to create without Roy. Because, I think it was, the one who took him down to the soil and said, this is how we have to do it in terms of money. I'm talking about in terms of money. Tell me something about it.
You're absolutely right, and that's a very, very interesting part of this, because you can't live in our culture without knowing about Walt Disney. Roy Disney stays hidden a lot of the time, and I think he wanted it that way. He made a point of staying out of the spotlight. But the more you learn about this history and about how these things happened, the more respect you have to have for Roy, because he really took some of these ideas of Walt's that that might have seemed impossible, and he had to find a good practical way to make them happen. And time after time, that's exactly what he did. He was absolutely almost selflessly devoted to his younger brother and to making his brother's plans come true. And even after Walt died and Roy was still there at the studio, I think he would have liked to retire before that. But after Walt died, Roy made a point of sticking around and finalizing things that had already been started. And it was his idea to change the name of Disney World to Walt Disney World. He didn't ever want anybody to forget the person who was behind this. So it's really kind of inspiring to see how humble he was, to see how he time after time he fought for the very best that could happen with Walt's plans and ideas. I think the model that you see from the time that they started, because they literally started with nothing. From the time that they started, you could say that Walt insisted on making everything they did the very, very best that it could be. And Roy insisted on making sure that they were paid accordingly. And because of that, he maximized the capital that they had to work with so that the next thing that Walt did could be done in an even more spectacular way. They made a great team in that way.
Oh no, I think they were a fantastic team, and Walt owe a lot to Roy in that sense that you are explaining. Now we talk about money here in a sense that the budget of Snow White went over $1 million, more than what it was supposed to be, right? Can you imagine if you are a person such as Roy or a banker and say, no, hey, it's $1 million more, but not $1 million as we understand it in 2021, but $1 million in 1937.
That's right. That's right. When $1 million was worth $1 million. Yeah, that part, I think, was a real nail biter for Roy. And you know the famous story about him inviting the banker to the studio. Joe Rosenberg invited him to the studio. And the way Walt told the story was that Roy talked him into doing this, showing him the unfinished film to explain to him why they still needed more money to finish it. Roy talked him into it. And then on the day that the screening happened, he said Roy was nowhere to be seen. So he had to sit there with Joe Rosenberg, and whenever an unfinished part of the film came up where it was still pencil animation or something, he had to try to explain, now this is really going to be beautiful here. And he said that that after it was over, he walked Rosenberg out to his car in the parking lot, and he said he was sweating bullets, because he was waiting to see what the answer was going to be. And Rosenberg talked about the weather and talked about everything except the movie he had just seen. Wow. Then he said that Rosenberg got in his car and said, well, so long, Walt, you're going to make a ton of money on that picture. And then he drove off.
There you go. Yeah.
So they did get the additional money to finish it.
Yeah, he did. Now let's talk a little bit the relationship between Charles Chaplin and Walt Disney, and the good advices that the British comic, gave to Walt in order to be able to produce the movie, because, it was the first experience, and he already had Charles Chaplin, had some experience, producing movie, and he was kind enough of giving Walt and Roy, more Roy than Walt, basically all the necessary documentation, right?
Well, that was a big thing for Walt, because Chaplin, of course, is one of the great geniuses of film history. And of course, Walt had tremendously admired him all the time he was growing up, as everybody did. I mean, Chaplin is still one of the all-time greats. And when Walt and Roy got their studio going, and especially when they started to have some success with Mickey Mouse, I think because Walt was a movie fan all his life, he loved the movies, and I think that it was a real thrill for him to suddenly find himself being lauded and praised and supported by these people who were the real giants in the field that he had admired all his life. And of course, Chaplin was a great example of that. And so I think the fact that he was now rubbing shoulders with the people who he had always thought of as his heroes, I think that had to be a tremendous thrill for him. And Chaplin had been really supportive, and he, when he had slowed down in his own film production a lot by that time, so he might take 4 or 5 years to finish a film. But when he did, and he opened a new film, he would insist that a Mickey Mouse cartoon be shown with it at the opening.
Wow.
And of course, he was one of the founding partners in United Artists, along with Mary Pickford and Doug Fairbanks and D.W. Griffith. So I think that too was a really big thing on Walt's mind when the Disney studio started distributing its cartoons through United Artists. That made it a lot easier for them to put a Mickey Mouse on the bill with the new Chaplin film, because they were both distributed by the same company.
Yes, that's right. I want to read you a text that I have here. Actually, it's a text that I'm going to take from your book. And I want you to tell me what comes to your mind when I read it to you. Okay?
Okay.
It says, once upon a time, there lived a little princess with hair black as ebony, lips red as rose, and a skin white as snow. Where will that take you?
Well, that's I think that's kind of the kind of thing that would appeal to Walt as setting the scene for the story that he's going to tell. You're kind of reducing it to the very basics, and then he's going to take those basics and build on them.
Exactly.
I think, and in fact, I think that was his instinct all the way through making the film, was that he didn't want a really complicated story. He wanted a plot thread that was relatively simple. And then once they had that plot thread established, then they could embellish that with scenes of comedy, pantomime, a lot of beautiful visual effects. But they needed this good, solid, basic framework to start with before they could build on it.
Exactly.
And I think what you're reading there is a good example of that. That was what they started with. Exactly.
And I think that little book on the screen when it opens, and we read this text, is for me like an anchor, in a sense that it gets you hooked in the story, and at the same time it provides you with enough information to know that something marvelous is going to happen. We are going to be seeing the story of this amazing character, which is Snow White, right? So I think is in my view anyway, it's a fantastic anchor, and that's how I like to call it. But tell me if you think Snow White is guilty of something, and I'm going to tell you where my question is going. We all know that they made a fair amount of money with the production of Snow White. Actually, I think for the golden period was the movie that made basically the largest amount of money. That allows them to change studios, Ypres, and all that kind of story. So, and Burbank. So, did you think the excess of money, well, if you want to call it that way, where they built the new studio, made the way of production a little different? And that's how many animators who were in both studios, mentioned, it was less personal and it became more, if you wish, more like a factory kind of thing. And I don't like to use that term, but just to use a one that everyone can understand.
Well, that's a very, very interesting point, and it's you can look at that either way. I can understand why Walt wanted to build a new studio. Um, the famous studio on Hyperion, which is not there anymore, but that was where Snow White and so many other great films were produced. They built that studio originally in 1926 when they were still producing the Alice comedies, and so what they built at that time was just what they needed to make that series of Alice comedies. Okay, so then they expanded their operation. They started making cartoons with sound, and more embellishments started being added to the films. And as these things happened, they would add new wings onto the studio, or they'd build an extension here or an addition there, and it basically just grew in a very haphazard way. So by the time Snow White was produced, there were hundreds and hundreds of people in this kind of haphazardly organized place, working in a way that was organized by necessity, basically. They had artists working in the bathrooms. They had people just kind of stuffed in wherever they could find a place to work. And at that point, Walt, I think, was already thinking, I'd really like to start over again and build a place from the ground up that is custom designed for the way we now make animated cartoons. So that was his whole motivation behind the building the new studio in Burbank, and it's amazing how much thought they put into that. It's when you look at the plan, it's just there's so much forethought put into it about how to streamline the system, how to make it more efficient, how to make it more comfortable for the artists. And so I think that he really thought this was going to be about as close to perfection as one could get in making animated cartoons. But you're right, a lot of the artists moved in, started working in this new, beautiful, state-of-the-art plant, and missed the chaotic camaraderie of the earlier days at Hyperion. And so there was a paradox there. They had a place that should have made their lives so much easier and should have made it so much easier to be productive. But yet, as you say, some people found that they were more isolated from the rest of the artists, and it just didn't have the same personal feeling that the earlier place had once had, with all its chaos and inconvenience. So you could argue it both ways. I think, of course, the Burbank studio is still there, and you can go there now and you can see how beautifully laid out it is. And people have commented over the years how it's really more like a college campus than it is like a movie studio, because it's so beautifully laid out and maintained. But yeah, it is the case that in gaining the way they did, they also lost something. And I think Joe Grant, who was one of the most brilliant people at the studio, he said something to the effect that the way this was all laid out was supposed to make the artists more comfortable, happier, and more productive. And instead of that, it made them sleepy. So it had some good effects, but then there was also kind of an equal but opposite reaction. And I don't know if that addresses what you're asking about.
No. It does. It does very well, actually. Thank you. Yes, it does. Now, one of the things that I myself, as an animation production person, for over 35 years, I one of the things that I take, like the most important thing is, of course, the script and the storyboard. And there were some scenes that were supposed to be on the storyboard on the screen, and actually they animated them, like the soup scene, when they were, drinking soup and making some funny noise and all that. Actually, I think that that could have been looking, fantastic in the movie. So what do you think of that? Because this is something that these days, as in production, animation production I'm talking about, is something that is absolutely unbelievable. The same thing happened in Fantasia with a couple of scenes, right? So I wanted to know, why do you think that is the case? Why those images didn't make it to the screen, and why they were produced when there is a cost associated to that production?
Well, that's an example of Walt's perfectionism. When they started working on these parts of the film, he envisioned them as part of the film, but as they continued to take shape, he could see that it wasn't working out the way that he had anticipated. And the most famous example is the one you're talking about, the soup sequence. And it's, Ward Kimball talked about that all the time in later life. And I think a lot of people, I've heard people talk about Ward Kimball's soup sequence as if he were the only animator. And in fact, I think there were 8 animators who worked on that sequence, but he was a big part of it, and he talked about it a lot in later years. And it was the case that the sequence in itself was shaping up to be really good and really funny and really entertaining. But as Walt saw the larger picture and saw the movie taking shape, that sequence was holding up the flow of the narrative. And at a time when he didn't want the narrative to be held up. It was they were getting into a section of the story where they needed to accelerate the pace. And so he recognized that even though the sequence was great in itself, it wasn't working for the overall good of the film. And so he cut it. And Ward Kimball was one of the artists that I interviewed who worked on the film. And I'll never forget what he said about that. He talked about Walt calling him in and explaining that he had to cut it out, and there was a reason for it, and it was for the good of the overall picture and so on. And Kimball wound up by saying, and he was right. I agreed with him, even though there were tears in my eyes.
Yeah.
So that's
yeah, interesting.
But that is the case, and it was the same way with some of the other things. There were other things in the film that had to be cut out in the same way. When the dwarfs left, on the morning after they met Snow White, when they left to go back to the mine, they were going to go out in the woods and try to think of a gift that they could give her. And ultimately, they decided they were going to build a bed for Snow White. And there was a whole long sequence of the dwarfs, chopping down trees and building this big, elaborate 4-poster bed for Snow White. And it was the same way. They got pretty far along. They recorded the soundtrack for it, and the artists started working on the pencil animation. And a lot of that still survives today. But again, it was holding up the story at a point where they needed to move the story along. So that one got cut out too.
Oh, yes. Fantastic. Yes, that's absolutely true. Now, let me ask you and I know the question is the $1 million question, okay? Which one is the favorite scene, the favorite sequence of the movie for you? Your favorite one?
Oh, there again. I love the whole movie so much that it's really, really difficult to pick out one part of it. I have to say that the opening sequence, not the very first thing, because the first thing you see in the film actually after the titles is the Queen going to her mirror. But then the next sequence after that, when Snow White is in the garden, there's something so pure and beautiful about that, that I have a real affection for that. Um, I think of a lot of producers in later years had produced something like that, possibly even including the latter day Disney studio, um, where Snow White, she's at the wishing well and she sings, "I'm wishing," and then the prince comes and sings to her, and she's shy and frightened and she runs inside. Um, I think a lot of later producers would have presented that, but they would have undercut it with some kind of comedy, like a wisecracking sidekick or something. Um, I think it's beautiful that they didn't do that, that they let the beautiful simplicity of that sequence stand for itself and speak for itself. There's just something, I think, really beautiful and charming about that. And I just, that's one of the first things that I always think of in connection with the film. I don't know that I can actually pick out a favorite, but that would be pretty high on the list for me.
Yeah, that one of my, I mean, for me, I have the same situation. I don't know which one to pick, right? But if I have to pick one, I love the scene because I think it's the culmination of the best animation, when the dwarfs are cleaning themselves, when they play with the water, when they wash their hands, when they have to, and all that, I think that is a fantastic scene because, the level of animation, each character moving, imagine, that layout, how it has to be done, right? It is a perfection. So that scene always got my attention, thinking, all the different levels and all that kind of stuff. Now,
That's right. It is beautiful. And we were talking about some of the great animators. You probably know Bill Teitla,
yes.
who was one of the best animators ever at any studio. He was largely responsible for that sequence,
Yes.
and it's just amazing. He projected such strength in his animation, and he was lots of animators worked on all seven of the dwarfs, but Teitla and Fred Moore were the two who really established the characters of them, and Teitla especially projected a lot of his strength into Grumpy, and of course Grumpy is a key character in that sequence.
Yeah, he's
Um,
the one who doesn't want to get washed, right? So yes.
that's right, and he pays for that. he pays for that attitude, and yeah, Teitla just you can feel the strength that that he's putting into this characterization. It's brilliant stuff.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Now, let's make, and it's not trying to put anything down, but let's try to make a comparison in terms of Snow White and the actual princesses of Disney, like Frozen or the Beauty and the Beast. Well, it's not a princess, but she will become a princess, I guess. And
Mhm.
the Sleeping Beauty and all those things. What is the characteristic of Snow White that make her so unique? Because the more people I talk about these, when you ask them, tell me the name of one of the princes, from any movie or whatever, many people say Snow White. And the kids these days, they say Elsa or Frozen because, maybe some of them haven't watched Snow White. What do you think? What is so powerful about Snow White that keeps in our minds?
Well, I can tell you my feelings about that, and I can't guarantee that everybody responds the same way, but to me, one of the things that's really, really interesting about Snow White is that her character is ambiguous. Even her age
Yes.
is ambiguous. You know, when in the Grimm brothers story, I think she's isn't she something like
7.
16 or something? She's very, very,
Very
very
young. Yeah.
young.
Yeah.
And 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 there was and I got into this a little bit in the book. At the time that the Grimm brothers wrote their version, um, that was kind of a disconnect that you could get away with in a written fairy tale,
Right.
because you could talk about her being very young, and then at the end of the story she marries the prince, so she's old enough for matrimony. So that's in a written story you can gloss over that age difference. And then in some of the stage and film versions that came afterward, um, those were made at the time of the kind of child slash woman heroine that was popular in our popular culture. But how do you bridge that in the performing arts as opposed to a written story? And whether by accident or design, the way they did that in Snow White, there were again an army of animators who animated the character of Snow White, but there were two in particular that were really important: Ham Lusk and Grim Natwick. And they were both brilliant animators, but they both brought different characteristics to Snow White. And Ham Lusk, I think he was a longtime veteran of the Disney studio, and he worked closely with Walt. And together they came up with this character who's very kind of wide-eyed, and if you look at her facial expressions in close-up, she is like a little girl. Then there was Grim Natwick, who came to the studio from other studios, and he is widely celebrated as a brilliant animator, which he was. But one of his strengths was being able to animate a graceful, feminine character at a time when most cartoonists were drawing, Popeye the Sailor, these characters with big feet, broad slapstick characters. He could make a female character move with real feminine grace. And in his scenes, whether by accident or design, in his scenes, Snow White came across as more of a mature young woman. And I think, and in fact, as a very broad generalization, I think that you see Snow White in close-up more often in Ham Lusk's animation, and in a medium or long shot more often in Grim Natwick's animation.
That's right.
And to me, there's a kind of tension between those two aspects of the character all the way through the film. And as opposed to, say, Cinderella, who came along more than a decade later, she is, unquestionably a young woman all the way through. That's with right. Snow White, you get that tension between the young girl and the young woman, and to me, that gives her a kind of added resonance that makes her stick in your mind that much more. And again, that's my opinion. I don't know whether it strikes anyone else the same way, but that's my take on her character.
Yeah. Well, we are reaching almost an hour, but I don't want to leave without asking you your opinion into things. What do you think on how all the characters evolve through the movie? Because at the beginning we see these characters, like the dwarfs and all that, behaving in one way, and then at the end how they cry because she's dead and all that. And even the witch, how she evolves from being, okay, I'm jealous of you, but then at the end it's like, I'm gonna kill you no matter what, right? So I think this is a key component on the movie, how the characters not only have personalities, but that personality changes with the movie.
That's right. That's a very good observation, and you're right. The characters have an arc. they are affected by the events of the story, as we all are in life. Um, and and yeah, I think that is striking. To me, one of the most striking examples of that is Grumpy,
Yes.
because at from the beginning of when you first see the dwarfs on the screen, and you're a good 3 or 4 reels into the film before the dwarfs show up. But right from the beginning, Grumpy is the woman hater, and he's negative, and he's got a nasty attitude and so on. And um, he gradually, very, very gradually through the film, uh, loses his heart to Snow White. And he's damned if he's going to let you know that. He's very he tries to cover it up with a show of gruff, anger and this kind of really truculent attitude. But he, against his will, he falls in love with Snow White. And at the end, when they are mourning her, when they think she's dead and all the dwarfs are crying, he's the one who is most visibly shaken. So I think that's an example of the kind of thing you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. It's amazing. So let me just ask you, for all of those who haven't watched the movie because a question of age, I'm talking about, kids, these days, or even teenagers or something like that. For that people that haven't watched the movie, give me a line or a paragraph, if you wish, why they should watch this movie. Why is so important this movie in the history of animation and in the history of filmmaking?
Well, I would say that number one, it's a hugely entertaining and charming and beautiful movie. It's something to be seen only because of that. But then, in addition to that, it has this place in history as not exactly the first animated feature, but definitely the first film of its kind. There had been animated features before, but nothing like this. And that place in history is very important because there are certain films all through history which were made by people who knew that they were doing something new and different and exciting. And when that happens, their excitement gets embedded in the film. And you can't watch the film without feeling some of that joy and excitement that the artists made when they felt when they were making the film. It leaps off the screen at you when you're watching it. Snow White is one of those films. It has that quality by the truckload. It's not only a hugely entertaining and charming movie, it's also a time capsule of that excitement of brilliance of artists who know that they are doing something new and wonderful and historic. And you owe it to yourself to experience that too.
Absolutely, I agree with you 100%. And I just want to say one last thing. One of the styles that are being used in the movie is the expressionism. The way some aspects are treated in the movie. And for me, I find absolutely amazing how you can use a technique such as expressionism, who is quite dark, right? And how in a marvelous way they use it in the movie, in the scenes where they want to scare us. We really get scared, like when the Snow White is in the forest, or on the presence of the queen, and how they were able to do that in such a way that is a complete movie. When I'm asked, about the movie, I always say that is the perfection, because it's a complete movie. It has such a big amount of characteristics that I will say, if I have to choose a perfect movie, this will be the movie that I would choose. Even though it's the first animated in a sense of cartoons, not in animation, but in sense of cartoons. So I think it's fascinating.
I agree, and you're right. It's and that's again, that's Walt was a movie fan all his life. So were many of the people who worked with him, and he had showings of great films, present and past, at the studio on a regular basis that the artists were invited to see, that helped to expand their horizons and their artistic concepts. So the great German expressionist films of the 1920s, they were familiar with those. And you can really see the influence of things like that in the sequence in the forest.
Exactly.
When she imagines that the trees are monsters clutching at her skirt and so on.
Exactly.
So, and it's not a matter of stealing. It's a matter of acknowledging these influences and then building on them to create something new and powerful of your own. Again, I think that's part of the genius of this film.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we have been talking 1 hour and 5 minutes, I have to say, with a great author. In my view, probably the most important book ever written about Snow White and maybe, about Disney story and Disney history. And I really recommend it to every one of you. The fairest one of all. The making of Walt Disney, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. It's for me personally, as a researcher, an educator of animation, it has been an honor and a pleasure to meet with you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your generosity with us and sharing all those stories. Don't leave. I'm just going to say bye to my friends here today. And now we have the next chapter of our podcast. Let's go to the round table of animation. See you now. Hey, hi again. And here we are in Cartoon Researchers and Educators, and we are with a group of amazing people who is going to help us to understand better a little bit, probably one of the best feature films ever produced in the history of animation. And of course, we are going to be talking about Snow White from 1937. With us, we have 5 specialists in the theme. And I'm going to introduce them, in order where I have them on my Zoom. And the first one that I have here is Steve Spain. We share the country because, I'm from Spain originally, as you may know. But Steve, tell us about yourself.
Oh, well, my name is Steve Spain. I'm a certified Disney geek. I've been a collector of vintage Disney animation art for about 35 years. Started when I was a kid, my interest in Disney, of course. I'm an old timer and I remember the original Mickey Mouse Club. Then when I went to college, I got a job as a movie projectionist back when movies were on film. And I watched the Disney films over and over again. And I said, boy, this is really beautiful work. And then one thing led to another, and here we are.
All right, so thank you for your time and welcome. I also understand that you have a wonderful collection. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I have about 110 pieces, various pieces from 1928 to 1959. I consider that kind of the golden era. 59 was the last completely hand inked and painted animation. So that's where my focus is. And it's, of course, in the era where Walt Disney himself supervised the films.
That's true. All right, here on the side, we don't be deceived by the name. We have this amazing New Yorker who also plays, and is a musician. And let me introduce you to Gustavo, our dear friend. Gustavo, please introduce yourself.
Well, thanks for having me, Raquel. It's a pleasure to be here. Yes, I'm coming to you live from New York City in my apartment. And yes, I'm a Disney collector and aficionado, and I'm newer to dealing. I became a vintage Disney dealer, independent dealer in the last few years. So it's been a lot of fun. I'm learning a lot, and I'm meeting great people like yourselves. And I'm looking forward to learning more in this conversation, and maybe hopefully contributing some too.
Yeah, I have to say, guys, that as you may know, the Met is going to have soon, or it's already started, an exhibition.
Started, yes. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And one of my goals for the new year, if you allow me to share it, is to go to New York to two things. First, to watch, the exhibition, and second, to go to Gustavo's store, where I will buy everything that is available. So he is an amazing dealer and a very serious person with a really high reputation. So I really, really recommend it. Thank you so much, Gustavo, for being here with us today. All right. And from the old continent, all the way from Italy, we have our own Mr. Snow White. Yes, that's how they call him in Italy. He has been putting voices, dialogues, and he's an advisor for some feature films and some documentaries, but I'm not going to talk too much. Let me introduce you to Nunziante. Ciao, caro amigo.
Ciao.
Ciao. Hi, everyone. Hi.
Tell us something about yourself, please.
Yes, I work for dubbing in Italy. I began working for dubbing about 20 years ago for the studio that was created by Disney legend Roberto De Leonardis, Roy Film. If you want to know who is Roberto De Leonardis, you can find it in the Disney legend official page, Roberto De Leonardis. He was the person who translated in Italian all Disney productions from Dumbo until Mickey's Christmas Carol. And I happened to know his son, Roy De Leonardis, Riccardo De Leonardis, because I wanted to make some research on who were the voices in Italy of Disney characters. And it happened that I teach to them who were, they didn't have any archive in their society, and so I began to work for them, and I began to translate for them the extras of the DVDs and Blu-rays. The audio commentaries, the Cine Explore commentary on the Blu-ray. In the Italian version, they are all written by me, and also I translated the Disney on Ice and the Disney Live shows in Italy.
So basically, he's the guilty one if we see, Mickey Mouse or Snow White speaking in Italian. He's the guilty one. Anyway, so thank you.
One of the guilty, the divisor. And so here I am. Snow White is my favorite movie, and
that's the reason why you're here.
Yes. And I am able to dub all by myself, all the characters in Italian, in English, and also in French.
Whoa.
So it's
Italians really have a special connection with Disney that's so unique.
Yeah.
Look, all the other countries in Europe, I've noticed it's a very special, unique world, almost their own little special, unique world universe of Disney.
That's absolutely true. Okay, we also have, by this time, we have it in Pickering, Ontario, in Canada. We have Carmen Llanos, who has been a animation film production person, director, and producer for over 25 years, kind of thing. And he does know a little bit about the golden age in Disney. Carmen, can you introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Carmen. As Raquel said, I've been producing and directing for more than 25 years. I enjoyed animation. I was born in Spain, and I started working in animation back then. And now I'm in Canada, and I think that Snow White is one of my favorite movies. I have others, but I don't want to, say that in this conversation. But yeah, Snow White is one of the biggies, definitely.
All right. Thank you, Carmen. And all the way from the Pacific Ocean, the other side of the continent, and she's not swimming. She is just in California. Let me introduce you to Debbie. Debbie, tell us something about yourself.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Like Steve, I've been collecting for around 30 years of the original animation art. I really like collecting villains as well as super cute. So I have some lovely pieces from Snow White in my own collection of the Queen, of the Witch, of Snow White, and things like that. I also turned my love of collecting animation into a gallery. So I own the Wonderful World of Animation. And if you want to check us out on the web, we're wwagallery.com. And one of the things that I love about the Snow White art is if you think about how old it is and you look at it and it's just so well done. When you hold one of the cells or drawings in your hand, you can feel the characters come to life. You can feel the moment in the movie. It's just, it has a magic and an essence that I think is just fantastic.
Okay, so I would like to throw kind of open questions, and please feel free to intervene whenever you have something to say or you want to say something. Why do you think Walt Disney chose Snow White as the first feature film?
Well, there's a lot of theories. There's a lot of theories of all this. Well, the one thing you hear all the time is that the first memorable film for Walt Disney himself as a youngster was seeing a silent version of the film of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs that always stuck in his head. He saw it when he was working as a newsboy, I believe, in Kansas City, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's one of the theories, and actually, I think that later in life he concurred and said that yes, that was the idea. But I want to mention something that is important because I don't know if our viewers know the story of why Disney went from short films in silly symphonies all the way to a feature film when no one was basically doing that. And if anyone wants to interrupt me, but basically the story comes that when he went to Europe in his trip to Europe, in 1935, he realized that in Paris, they put several shorts of Mickey Mouse one after the other, and people was able to stay 1 hour and a half or 2 hours in the theater, and wow. So he said, well, if these people can watch 7 minutes, if we have a good enough story, we will make a feature film without any problem, right? Which I think is very smart.
I think that also is because that was a crazy idea. And it's the Disney's folly. So I think that he just went and did that when everybody tried to tell him not to do that because that was crazy. So I think that's one of the genius part of Disney.
Yeah.
Also, I've heard him say in interviews himself, Walt saying that he felt with the short films that he hit a ceiling. It was only so far he can go with that, even financially, his brother would say. And that in order to go where he really wanted to go in his head, he had to make this feature film, despite all the naysayers.
Yeah, absolutely. No, he was the first one basically doing a feature film, but in cartoons, because the first feature film was actually El Apóstol, which was produced in Argentina,
Right, yeah.
20 years before that. So it's crazy by a Italian guy who moved to Argentina, and he made an amazing movie. So let me ask you a question, because Carmen says a word that I don't know if we can apply here. Did you think Walt Disney was a genius? Who wanted to answer my question? Do you think he was a genius?
The G word.
Yeah. Steve, what do you
I'd
think?
argue yes. Yeah.
Yes, surely it was a genius. That's absolutely. And making some research, I found that he went to Italy also when he was doing this trip to Europe.
Yes,
and he went to Rome, and they took him to the Cinema Barberini, and he saw several of his shorts projected together. One of them was the Goddess of Spring, and so I was surprised to find on Disney Plus the original Italian track
Wow.
that Disney listened to that evening. If you can see it in Italian in America, Goddess of Spring, you'll find that's this strange Italian soundtrack, all sung in opera style. In
Wow.
Italian. And as you say, that was the time when he said to Roy, you see, in Europe they show several of our shorts together, so we can make a feature, and it will be more simple to us also to gain something, because the shorts cost too much and we don't gain enough to produce some other shots. So it was necessary to him to go to the feature. Also, I think he wanted to experiment to a greater extent the Technicolor process. He was one of the first to use the 3-strip Technicolor.
That's true.
And so, and Snow White was important also because Hollywood producer didn't think Technicolor was a great thing. They said our black and white films are well done. They make money. We don't need color. But when they saw what Snow White did in theaters, they all began to make color movies, you know, like the Wizard of Oz. The Wizard of Oz is one of the movies that was made because Snow White had proved that the fact that a fairy tale could attract people, and
Yes.
they could watch a fairy tale for an hour and a half without being tired.
Actually, Disney had an exclusive agreement with Technicolor, 3-stripe Technicolor, so he was the only one who was allowed to use it. Steve, do you want to say something?
I just want to go and kind of agree with what has been said before. I think Walt ran into a ceiling with the short films. He couldn't make any more money, but Walt always wanted to increase the quality of his films, and the only way to do that would be to go to the feature length. And I think one other thing that Walt wanted to do in a short film, those are basically a series of gags and a script that's loose. He wanted to develop a real film with character development, a script, beautiful music, romantic element, not only joy, but pathos. He wanted to do a real motion picture in an animated form. And I think that was the basis for him doing Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Yes, absolutely. David, would you like to add something, please? David, do you hear me?
Oh, sorry. What was the question? I heard.
No, I was just asking if you would like to ask something to this genius figure that we have in our hands today, which is Disney.
I would say from my perspective, I look at the genius in terms of the art and look at the depth of the art and the storyboarding and how they really were able to develop the story from just ideas and the concept art going through the storyboards and then having it come out into what you see on the screen and the precision that has to happen with each drawing and then each cell and background to make that believable. You know, for you to elicit emotions basically off of drawings and paintings, I think is a good definition of genius.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. I just want you to mention something about the script of Snow White. I myself, as an animation production and producer and director, I had the opinion that he did the best thing any producer can do. And you know what? Is produce a show where the authors are not alive and then they cannot claim authors' right. So The Green brothers were dead, obviously, and they couldn't claim any rights. No, but one thing that I think is important to understand is how he and his team adapted, what is the real story of Snow White based on the Green brothers book into a feature film, because actually he only used some key points, but if you really take a deep look, there are a lot of things that are changed. For example, the witch at the end, in the book, is killed because she has to wear some red iron shoes. And in the story, well, we all know how it finished. I'm not going to spoil the end of Snow White, but we think. So how do you think, why do you think he was such a master when he was able to adapt, stories from other people and creating and making them their own, like
he had a long runway, because one of the astonishing things about the film, from a storytelling and from a script writing perspective, is the source material is maybe 4 pages long. It's very short. And he managed to make a 90-minute film. Was it 86 minutes? And he finds a way to pace it and make it not, because you could tell the story in about 2 minutes, right? If you're just telling the basic plot points. But he managed to make a compelling story, well-paced, constructed plot. And it's very satisfying. It's very well done. It's brilliant, actually, how it was conceived.
Yeah. Nunciante?
Oh, I was thinking. I remember I read the Grimm fairy tale many times. When I was a little boy, I didn't complain too much about the differences, because I accepted them. But there are most on the psychological side of the characters, because the queen tries to kill Snow White 3 times, and when you read this, you as an adult, you would think about Snow White is a dumb person. The dwarfs as warned you, don't make anyone go into the house, and you do it 3 times, but you are silly. And so Walt Disney decided to one only attempt, and Snow White is forced psychologically to take the apple. If you see, she's frightened by that person, but it's hypnotized.
Yes.
And so it's much more understandable that she bites the apple than in the original story. So also in the original story, Snow White is a baby. It's about, I think, 7-8-year-old.
That's right. That's correct.
So that's so much time she passes in the Seven Dwarfs house. And sometimes people don't understand that the time she passes in the dwarf's house in the Disney version is 1 day. Because all the film, it's in 3. I think it's 2 days, not more.
2 days. Yes.
2 days, not more. And it's a masterpiece of storytelling and adapting. And so after the Snow White film, all the versions that were written did pay something to Disney version that became almost the original Disney version.
The
original version of the story. So.
Yeah. Well, in the book, she was tempted 3 times. One with a comb, another time with the apple, and another one with that corset. Yes. Yeah, and she failed all the time. So it's very interesting how Walt decided to use one of these. So what do you think of the adaptation of the book, Steve, regarding the actual movie itself?
Well, I think we were talking about Walt being a genius, and he was. And I don't think we should look over the fact that this was Walt's first feature film. When you're doing something that has never been done before, you have nothing to base it on. But I also believe that he was very good at telling stories that the general public, the common man, understood and enjoyed. And I think that was the real genius behind Snow White.
Yeah,
He adapted the book and eliminated. Editing is so important to great films, of course. And he took those pieces which touched the public and eliminated those that he thought would be so-so or offensive or whatever.
Yeah, and we can't forget that actually when the movie was produced in some countries, such in the UK, you had to be 16 or older to watch the movie, because actually the story, if you read the story or if you understand the story, is actually not for kids. The story was never written for kids; it was written for adults, and that's how Disney also made a huge mix there, of kids production together with adult animation. David, do you want to add something about the adaptation?
Well, I would say that one of the pivotal scenes that you're referencing is when the witch gives the apple to Snow White. And that is a very desirable scene for collectors in terms of when we're looking at collecting animation art, people relate to the film. They're collecting it because it elicits an emotion in them. And so what we tend to find is people are often very drawn to certain scenes. And so I would say that the apple scene, again, is very desirable in other ones. And I pulled up some images. If you want me to share my screen at some point, I'd be happy to do that.
Absolutely. Let me allow you to share the screen. And let me I just pressed the wrong button. Not everyone is allowed to share the screen. Debbie, please show us some pictures.
Okay, so when we're starting.
Beautiful.
Oh my God.
So this is something from my own collection. I bought a collection from someone in Alaska, gosh, right when I started. And there was about 30 pieces. This was one of them. And what was so special to me about this collection is this is, the concept art. This is where everything's starting, the ideas are flowing. And a lot of times concept art doesn't really look like the final product because, you might have Snow White with blonde hair or these other things. And so it's really a very advanced level of collecting. And there's some other pieces from this collection where there was one with the queen who had a pet puma by her side, which we didn't see in the final film, but you just have these amazing, amazing pieces. So once we move from concept art, we go to drawings. And this is also a piece in my own collection. And this is I don't know if you can see in the middle, but this is like a double size.
Probably by Art Babbitt, you think, no?
I think it's Babbitt. Yeah. And, this is just such a powerful, you can feel this drawing come off. You can see the line work and the expression on her face. Just to me, this is a home run. And at the top, you can see these little lines, and this is done by the head animator. They're showing me the first 352 is the first movement in this little mini scene, and then 360 would be the end. So those are the extreme drawings that they would do. And then this becomes more recognizable to folks are the original cells. And so this is a dopey with diamonds in his eyes. This is also in my personal collection. And I saw this piece. I've been looking for this piece for decades, and I finally got it just a couple years ago. And you would think I see a lot of art, which I do, but there's even things that are elusive to me, given how much art I've seen. Yes. So this would be the original Courvoisier. Courvoisier was a gallery in San Francisco early on that Disney commissioned to actually sell the cells for them. So in a lot of cases, Snow White, I believe they did not actually trim the cells, but they often put overlay cells, which is what you can see these kind of reflections on the right where it looks a little wavy. A lot of times Courvoisier, what they did is they trimmed the cells and then stuck them onto what's known as Courvoisier background. So what's interesting is they basically just had a lot of boxes. And so you often see a Snow White with a dopey or a Snow White with another dwarf, and they don't match in the film that way because Courvoisier was like, oh, this Snow White looks good with this dwarf, let's stick them together. But these are very desirable by collectors, and we're very happy that Courvoisier existed because a lot of the cells.
Loved it, right?
survived. Because if you think about it, the final product was the film to show in the movies and make the money there. If you think about it, in college, you're writing your essay, you've got your notes. Once you turn it into the professor, you throw all the other stuff away. But that's the stuff the collectors want, all the stuff, that in theory they would have thrown away. This is a piece I recently got in. This is a Courvoisier cell, which we recently sold. But this is just, you can just feel this moment and look at her face. And to me, I like the pieces where the characters are themselves. Snow White is singing a lovely song. I'm very happy for her eyes to be closed. I know some people are like, oh, eyes open, this or that. I'm about the emotion and the moment. And I feel like you can really feel this moment. And then
Beautiful.
this is the other one.
Oh,
And
okay.
so this is something we recently got in and sold as well. And to me, this is just, when we were talking about genius a few minutes ago, look at this smoke effect, and look at this is in the 30s. I mean, how did they do this? This is just, and this is original. All the pieces I'm showing you are not restored. This is the original paint. It survived. And I mean, you could just feel the evilness, the expression. This piece is glorious to me.
It's one of my favorites you've shown. That's incredible. Absolutely incredible.
And that's what I have to show you.
Wow.
Thank
Debbie,
you.
thank you very much
Those are
for
gorgeous.
showing those beauties. Oh my God, I'm now speechless. I don't know what I have to say now. I
Well,
have lost my voice. I have
Talk
lost
about this.
everything.
Can we
Go
talk
ahead.
about this? Debbie touched upon it. Is that just the effects animation for the 30s? But on a larger point, I never stopped being fascinated by the tremendous leap that was made between the silly symphonies and the shorts and Snow White in just a span of a couple of years. Nunziante mentioned the Goddess of Spring, which is released 2 years prior.
Yes.
What a leap that was! Or it's incredible, astonishing. I can't get over it how advanced it is. It's still amazing. It's still amazing. It's the yardstick by which all their features, animated features, are still measured.
Yeah, the short, actually, the old mill was the one where he experimented with some special effects and all that. On there. Exactly. I just wanted to give a very one of the things that I discovered during my investigation, for my books, is that you see that Snow White have some reddish color on her, her cheeks. And that was one of the biggest mysteries in the world, is how did they do that? Well, it was very simple. It was just one single lady in the whole studio who was able to do that. And what she did, she took a small little piece of lipstick, a very small little piece, mix it, with water, mix it until it reached that particular color, and cell by cell, drawing by drawing, frame by frame, basically, my friends, she painted that so Snow White can have in her cheek some kind of colors, something that doesn't happen in any other movie, for the single reason that this lady left the studio. So she was the only one who knew the technique. So of course, that is something that happened. Steve, let me ask you, as collector, what do you feel, when you have those amazing pieces that you have in your hand, especially, I'm thinking Snow White, obviously, here, right? And when you have them in your hand, or Debbie, when you have them in your living room hanging, I'm just thinking of the pieces that I have here, also from my own collections. What do you feel? Because sometimes, it just, it's overwhelming. Tell me.
Well, it's a tremendous thrill, really, to hold something in your hand, an image that has been seen by generations and probably millions of people, and you're holding it in your hands in your home. It's a piece of history. It's a piece of film history, Americana.
It's the only one that will exist. It's one of a kind.
They're all one of a kind. There's no multiples of it. You're holding the one, and it's in your hand. It's a great sense of responsibility too, because we're, most collectors, I think Debbie will agree with me, and Gustavo and everyone, we're just stewards for these things.
Yes.
And taking care of them until the next collectors or people come by, and then hopefully they'll carry them forward, and that's how history works.
That's true, Debbie.
I agree with everything Steve said. What I really love is the pieces that I have, they elicit an emotion in me, and I look at it, and I when there's a new piece I'm getting, I feel it. Sometimes I have dreams about finding animation in someone's basement or things like that, elicits an emotional reaction. And I love stopping the DVD and saying, I own that. That's on my wall. Like I'm a part of this. And also, sadly, since a lot of the pieces didn't survive the years, it's not like you can look through Snow White and go, oh, I want that one and that one and that one, and eventually I'll find it. Relatively very few pieces survived. And so you just get this sense of the magic and the history, and you can, sometimes hear the song singing in your head when you look at a piece. The other thing I like about it is it's very accessible. There's people of mostly all ages that can walk into your house and relate to the art. Kids will look and go, I know what that is. Older people will look at it. I know what that is. People from other countries will look at it and go, I know what that is. And so there's something about having an animation collection that even if people that come to your home don't collect Disney, they have an appreciation for it, and it means something to them, and it's very relatable to them. And that's one of the things I love about it. You just have this collectible that you can share with everybody, and they can feel something from it also.
Yeah, sorry, Carmen, go
I
ahead.
find it very interesting how Disney, as a genius, he had the merchandise of the movie available the same day that the movie opened, but how he didn't foresee the potential of the sales and the production materials. So for me, like, if he was alive right now, he would be like, oh no, I should have taken all the sales and all everything to sell it too. So I think that, it's like very interesting. He was also a business person in the sense when, he had all the merchandise available, but just thinking that detail of having the production materials available didn't cross his mind.
They thought this had no monetary value. They threw most of it away or recycled it. In fact, the Cavassier, experience, I don't think it didn't do all that well, I don't think, because it kind of petered out. And it was in the 50s, late 50s, they were selling feature animation cells for as little as $1 in Disneyland in the gift shop because they needed souvenirs.
Yeah.
So
I have to.
Yeah.
I'm going to share something with you, and then I'm going to give the word to Nunciante because I know he has some material to show us as well. And this is a very personal thing, but you are going to allow me to do that. Now, in the configuration of my home, I have part of my collection put it in such a way where if I am in bed, I can see my office, so I can see my collection. So that gives you an idea, of how obsessive, and how these can take part of your life and in such a big sense. So Nunciante, let me go to you. I know you have something to show us, please.
Yes. I don't have many cells or original drawings. My buddy Stefano, that's here, is a collector. He has something of his, and he gave something to me as a gift. But I was collecting in the past years something about the Italian version of this.
Oh, very interesting.
So, this is the original newspaper that was given to the theaters from RKO Italy, the Italian agency that was General Cine, and they had advertised the coming of the Biancaneve to the Italian cinemas from December 23, 1938.
Wow.
After the presentation at the Venice Film Festival.
Wow, that's fantastic.
And they made also, that's a thing I found on eBay, that there was the chocolate and the candies from Elac Pernigotti. they gave as a gift these chocolates, little pictures of the film, and if you collect them, you could win these dolls of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Wow, that is
So
fascinating.
this is a magazine of July 1938. I found many years ago in a shop, and Lo Schermo advertises the coming of Snow White to Venice, that with the Gustav Tengren illustration on.
Wow.
And there was an essay in this magazine that was important, that said that Walt Disney was, as you say, liberatore, a person who frees cinema, because he takes the fairy tales to the big screen and shows to all people that the public can relate to a thing that's not true, that's not documentary, that's totally invented, and find it beautiful. And so starting from Snow White, many other directors and could make a fantastic movie with the fairy tales, with something that's not a documentary, if you understand.
Yes, of course.
Saying that the liberation of the that's very much what Sergei Eisenstein appreciated.
Yes.
He was a major fan. It surprises me how much in love he was with Walt. He went to meet him, in fact, in California.
Yeah, and you know, actually, Einstein. There is a book about the relationship between him and Disney.
Yeah.
And, he went to say that the best thing that ever came out of the United States was Disney.
No way.
Yeah, and Snow White. Yeah.
He called the greatest of all films.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Look at this. These are the books that were made in Italy. This is from 1972, and the editor, the publisher was Arnoldo Mondadori. That's another Disney legend.
Yes.
His books were so beautiful and so well done that other countries bought them and translated them from Italian.
Yeah.
That's a Spanish version,
Yes.
Blanca Nieves. That's translated from Italian, not from English.
Yeah. Wow. That's
One other curious thing, this is the book that Mondadori made in 1948.
wow.
And he made also in German.
Wow.
That's a funny thing. And I sometimes I say that if Walt Disney is so important in Italy, it's because strictly because of the two persons. One was Roberto De Leonardis, and the other one was Arnoldo Mondadori, that was also the one that became to publish the famous Topolino, the comic book that they still printed. It was an idea of Arnoldo Mondadori. And also in Italy, we had the first long stories of the Disney characters.
Wow.
Very
Wow.
Uh,
Yeah.
Very special.
So I think that's an important thing. And sometimes the actual Disney management tends to forget this, that we in Italy had so an important place in Disney history.
Yeah,
I still think they should have put Euro Disney in Italy.
I mean, I will
fight.
fight for Spain and Canada then.
Yes,
on this.
yes, but I listened many times also to Spanish versions, because Walt Disney was so he wanted that his movies seem the movies made in every country they were shown, and so he had friends that prepared the international versions in every country. And so in Italy we had Roberto Donatis. In Spain there was Edmundo Santos.
Edmundo Santos, sí.
Edmundo Santos. In Portugal there was Gilberto Souto.
Yeah.
In France there was Louis Sauvat. And so everyone was a close friend of Disney, and he trusted them very, very much.
Disney had his eyes on the international market because, Debbie, you know, right? How many languages did they have prepared for the different they have different language versions of the beds with the dwarfs' names?
Oh, yes.
Translated the Wicked Queen's book of spells was translated into multiple languages, and they made so many different prints for each different each market. Incredible.
Yeah, and actually there is one something I'm going to give you a little information that I just researched, and I think it's very fascinating. He made a special version of Snow White for India because there were some concepts, special editing and special dubbing for India, because at that time in 37 in India, there were some censorship, let's call it in this way, where, you know, they were not able to show Snow White as the way it was produced because there were certain elements that were considered to be offending, you know, for the public. So they did have to make a special editing with the sound and the editing of the image and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, he was a master of adapting, you know, the materials to any part of the world just to, you know, to share, you know, his thing. But I don't want us to lose too much focus on Snow White. Tell me, guys, what was your reaction the first time you watched the movie, even if it was when you were a little toddler, a little kid? Tell me, what was your reaction? Steve?
Well, I was a little guy then. I'm an old timer now, so I probably saw it in one of the big movie palaces here in town. But it was so believable. Even though it was a fantasy and an animated film, I believed as a small child that place existed somewhere in the world, and I was watching it. Of course, near the end and during the witch scenes, of course, I was terrified. I recall my mom putting her hands over my eyes because I was so scared, and I felt bad about that. And then I heard Diane Disney Miller tell the same story when she saw one of the first screenings with her dad, Walt, and she covered her eyes too. So I didn't feel so bad then.
I think that we all did the same thing when we were kids. Gustavo, what happened to you?
Well, it's one of my earliest memories. It might have been the first or second movie I saw in a theater as maybe 3 or 4 year old. I remember flashes of it, and it's always been one of my favorite movies ever. It still is, and I grew to appreciate it again, I think, in my college years, because it started to come up. I was a film student. So if you're taking a film history course, this era of Disney, the Snow White, Pinocchio era, comes Fantasia, and I learned to really look at it with new eyes and form a deeper appreciation for it that lasts to this day. It knocks me out. I watched it again last night just to get in the mood for today's conversation. And I never get tired of it. The Witch is the scariest. That's my favorite villain. And I went on that ride, the Disney World ride, the Walt Disney World ride with the Witch, and that traumatized me for years. So I loved it at the same time. It's my favorite villain to this day.
Yes, it's mine as well. Yes. Debbie, what was your experience?
I found it scary as well. I found it very enthralling and magical, and I found the songs very catchy. So I was singing, you know, The Whistle While You Work and all that kind of stuff. And there was a lot of emotions going on. But, you know, when you see something like that, particularly young, I think those movies, they never leave you. They really kind of imprint upon you a little bit. And that's, I think, why you see so many people attached to Disneyland or the collecting or things like that. I mean, look at how many people go to Disneyland, Disney World time after time after time as grown-ups, you know, not with little kids. And I have 4 young kids, and I love taking them to Disneyland and experiencing it again through their eyes. And there's just something that happens that's very magical, and it's a shared experience with people all over the world. And that's how I felt when I saw it.
All right, Carmen, tell us your experience.
So I was also scared witch. But there
Sure,
was
no.
something that I enjoyed, and we had the record at home. And whenever we played the record, my favorite scene in my head was when she's singing and the birds are flying around. So how the animals interact. And for me, it was like a happy place. So I remember that part, with a lot of emotion, because for me, it was like a beautiful place. She's singing, the animals are there, there's harmony. So I think that was what balanced, the bad witch and all the stuff that was happening, and just the songs, as David was saying, like singing the songs and remembering the movie. And I think it was like, for me, it was very impactful.
Okay, Anunciante.
Oh, I was listening to all your experience, and I remember mine. I remember also precisely the day. It was the December 23, 1972.
Wow.
Because that was a reissue that was for Christmas after 10 years. I was not able to see it before because I was born in 1963, and the reissue was in 1974 and 72. And so I had to wait, but my mom and aunt had seen it the first time in 1939 here in Aversa. You think that movie theater that showed it is still operating?
Wow.
So for me, it's moving to pass that way and see that that's the place my mom and aunt saw Snow White in 1939. And so when the film was announced on TV, we had a publicity program that showed the trailers. And one night, some days before Christmas, this show was called the Prima Visione. And they made the trailer was Snow White, and my mom began to cry, Snow White, we gotta take Nunziante to see Snow White. My aunt was so they decided that I had to watch Snow White. So they took me to Naples in a big, beautiful theater we had in the center of the town. And I remember that it was the first showing on the day, and 4 o'clock, I think, in the afternoon. The lights dimmed. That was the writing on the screen because it was the 50th anniversary of Walt Disney, and they had that symbol 50 happy years.
Yes.
The carry on playing When You Wish Upon a Star. And so after that, the big screen, our Walt Disney feature production. Wow, and Nunziante got there for 1 hour and a half, not thinking to anything but Snow White. Wow.
Wow. I have to say that, actually, you're not going to believe it, but the first movie that I watched from Walt Disney was Bambi. Because that was the first movie, and it was only later that I had the opportunity of watching Snow White. But everyone, when you refer to Snow White, everyone thinks, wow, the witch, the queen, when she transformed, that's very scary. I was not scary at all of that, but I was scared of the crowd. Because, the little bird that is there, I don't know why, I found it was like, oh my God, this is so terrifying. I love the witch. I love the queen, is my favorite one, actually, of one of the characters, right? But yeah, so anyway, let's talk a little bit about money. We can stay here hours and hours and hours and hours. Let's talk about the relationship of Roy and Walt in relationship with this movie, because we all know the movie went over budget, like absolutely crazy. And people who knew him said that Roy was a cent person, he was checking the cents and the pennies, like crazy. So what is your opinion about that relationship that, was so fantastic? Who wants to start?
I think it's Roy Disney is the left brain of the operation, and Walt is the right brain. That's a combination that you'll never get again. They argued all the time. They argued over Snow White. And you can understand Roy's perspective because it does seem crazy. Think about if you're the person that's in charge of the money, how would you react if your brother's telling you you're going to spend yet another $1 million on this project that you're already in? It's a tremendous risk. You'll lose everything if it doesn't go well. And but at the same time, he believed in his brother and he protected him and he looked out for him. It was a familial thing. So it was very special, very unique relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. Steve?
Agree with Gustavo. And let's not forget that Walt was all in on this thing. He mortgaged his house. He cashed in his life insurance. He sold his car, everything possible. And but Roy was the kind of the steadying influence. And it's just amazing. And we have to talk about too. We talked about how great the film was. We have to talk about how great a success it was. It was an immediate hit, and it quickly became the all-time box office champion of any film.
Yes.
Position that it held until 1939 when Gone with the Wind overtook it. And for decades after that, it still held the record for the number of tickets sold. And the reason was because many of the tickets sold were child's tickets at reduced prices. And therefore, there were a lot of tickets sold, but they didn't equal the dollars. But it was box office king. And of course, it was the pillar on which the whole Walt Disney Company was really based. And it built the Burbank studio, no question.
Yeah, well, actually, he was able, with the benefits of Snow White to buy the new studio and Longo Imperion and all that. It was fantastic. The other day I read something that it was very interesting. This is just a small thing, is that when Walt and Roy Disney were showing the new studio to his father, right? His father says, so all this, what is used for? It's like, well, we produce animation, and we do these things and we do films and blah, 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 blah. So his father stayed there and said, what else? What if it doesn't work? And Walt Disney ran away and said, well, this can be sold as a hospital. So they kind of put a hospital here. I thought that was very, very interesting. Carmen, what do you think of the relationship between Roy and Walt?
Well, I think that they work well together. They complemented each other. And from a producer perspective, I think that the original budget was like $250,000. And then the movie went almost up to 1.5 million.
That's correct.
So I think that Roy loved his brother very much. But otherwise, I don't know, like if it was me, I don't know what I've done, but probably, I think that sleepless nights for Roy. And, I think that brotherly love won. And then in the end, it worked out. But when we're talking about the genius part of it, I'm like, yeah, but he was very sure about what he was doing. But having somebody who believes in you and makes it happen with you, I'm not sure if they had another choice just to continue to raise the money to finish it, because they were already in so much trouble that they were at a point that like, okay, yeah, we don't have another choice but finish it. So I think that it was that Roy had faith in Walt, and probably Walt had the same faith in Roy, because he knew that he will make it happen with him. So, I think it was a very important relationship for sure.
Yeah,
his career when Walt could have retired early after the success of Mickey Mouse. He could have retired and bought an island after Snow White, but he was not really the traditional businessman. He was the entrepreneur as artist, a very unique, strange thing, but wonderful thing. And Roy was the anchor. Roy kind of was his job to keep his feet somewhere near the ground. They never were on the ground, but keep them closer to the ground. from where they were.
Yeah, I remember, in one conference that I was part of, and they were talking about the relationship between Roy and Walt. And they did a drawing that I wish I had taken a picture because it's the best drawing I had seen, which is the Mickey Mouse, the head of Mickey Mouse. And then on the right shoulder was Walt, like an angel. And then on the, like a demon on the left side was Roy. Not because he was bad, but he was the one who was able to control the angel. You know what I'm saying?
Walt Disney said once, this is a quote from Walt Disney was addressing I think the Boys and Girls Club of America, or Big Brothers Association of America.
Mm-hmm.
And he said to the audience, if it were not for my brother Roy, my big brother Roy, I would be in jail for writing bad checks.
Yeah.
Because I never knew how much money was in our bank account.
Yeah.
Roy took care of me. Roy looked out for me.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Debbie, what do you think of the relationship?
Well, I wouldn't say I really have a lot to add to what everybody else said, but I'm very glad that they had that relationship because it certainly made a lot of wonderful things happen. So I think it's interesting to have the balance of the creative and kind of the business and how the two come together to be very powerful.
Yes. Nunciante?
I agree with all of you. It's an important relationship, but the miracle of this relationship that was the right compromise between business and art, because yes, Roy was strict, was very prudent, but he left Disney go after his dreams of something that was after Snow White. Pinocchio and Fantasia were very different. No producer in Hollywood would have pursued such dreams. It was something I don't. It was unbelievable that after such a big hit, you go and try something that was never done, like classical music with no words in the one feature, and stereophonic sound that does not exist. That's fantastic, and I think their relationship was important to make something of this happened, because I watch now what Disney company do, and they don't do the same thing. They are following the stream,
The formula. Yeah.
the formula. They are following the formula, the stream. When also when I was a little boy, so also in the 60s, they created the stream, and that's different. I was when I saw the making of Frozen, that I like Frozen, but I see all these persons sitting in a room, and one says a thing, one other says another thing, and but how can a thing like this go on and became something? Because there's confusion.
Yeah.
Well, to do the animated feature film at the level of execution that Walt Disney did at his peak, as Steve said, from Snow White through Sleeping Beauty, is a very, very volatile business. Most of Disney's peers in the same industry didn't survive. The Fleischer brothers, they couldn't hack it. It was very, very volatile. If you fall hard. And if it wasn't for Cinderella in 1950, I think the company would have gone under. It was really on a decline financially. It was to make animation at that standard, it was very, very demanding financially, especially.
Yeah, I just think
It'll never be done again.
The Fleischer brothers did the Gulliver's Travel in around that time in '39, and it was completely a disaster. And it was also a feature film because they were imitating Disney. But I think the big difference is what Nunciante said, is that they had one head, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah.
One head who was a creative one, who was the one who had the vision. I think that what is happening these days is more than the head of the creative department in some big studios is more the merchandising person rather than a creative person. And
Yeah.
that's the
This way-
reason why, yeah, sorry.
Yes, yes, that's true. That's true. I think sometimes they do movies. A friend of mine says they do movies to sell dolls.
Yeah.
I'll put it this way: unless there's an executive or a studio head or a producer willing to sell his own car to make a film,
That's right.
a cartoon like that, that's not going to happen.
That's
A Walt Disney and a Roy happen once in every few hundred years. It was a very happy accident that they did what they did. It's like the Cathedral Notre Dame. You couldn't make that today if you wanted to. You couldn't make Snow White again today if you tried.
No, it will be impossible. So I know that I promise our viewers and listeners, that we'll be talking 1 hour about Snow White, but it's impossible. So we are in an hour now. So I just want to have your final reflections about Snow White. And I concur you to the next podcast that will be Pinocchio. So next time we'll be talking about Pinocchio. So Steve, please let me know your final thoughts about Snow White or something that you would like to share with us.
I don't know if I can add anything more other than it's a masterpiece. Talking about Disney's today, I don't think you can have a genius by committing, and I think that's what the company is trying to do today. But and again, every frame of these films was done by hand. You'll never see that again, and it's just a masterpiece. Snow White is.
Thank you, Gustavo.
Oh, again, thank you for having me and all these wonderful people on this panel. It's so great to finally connect with some of you face-to-face, FaceTime, Zoom time. And yes, this is a major work. And you could talk about it, and we could spend another, I'm not kidding, 3 hours talking about even things like, you're not going to get away without me showing something from my...
Oh, please do so. Absolutely.
I have my own little show and tell here. So I have here I'll show 2 pieces. So here is the original Snow White soundtrack.
Wow.
Very first movie soundtrack ever released on RCA.
I have it in Italian.
Italian versions have a nicer label. The American,
but the records were
the American label is sort of dull.
Yes. Yes.
Wow, yes, the picture
The British and the European have beautiful yellow with the illustrations on it, much nicer.
Yes, but the recording in the Italian version are still the original one, not the Italian ones. But the voice, the singing voice of Snow White in the first version, because the film was redubbed in 1972. The first singing voice is a famous soprano, Lina Paiughi.
Oh,
That's
okay.
very
I
famous.
didn't know that. Wow. Oh, okay.
Instead, the speaking voice was Rosetta Calavetta. That, as a funny thing, she was the Italian voice of the Anna Darling. The Anna Darling that didn't win to be the voice of the Snow White in original. So
right.
In Italy we had the Italian voice of one person that did not win, that did not do the voice in Italian, the voice in original. That's a funny thing.
Yeah.
I'll show you one more thing for you.
Yes.
And my if you want to find out where you can purchase things from me, my handle on Instagram is Books, Toys, and Records. You can reach me at bookstoysandrecords@gmail. And just hit me up, let me know what you're looking for. I'm happy to watch. Now, this is not a mint. I sold my mint copy, but here's a nice reading copy I have of the original.
I also have it. Beautiful. Also in Italian. Mondadori printed it in Italian. The same thing.
Yeah. Wow. Look at that. Oh my goodness. Oh my God. What you have in your hands, Gustavo, is just a dream. Wow, look at all those designs and oh my God.
And most merchandise came out in, really was produced in 1938 when the film went into wide release. So if you have a piece that has the 1937 year on it, that's special. Those are more scarce. So there are definitely things that came out in 37, but the film was released very late in 1937, December.
Yeah, December.
Yeah, so the big wave of merchandise really hit in the following months.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so thank you. Anunciante, your last thought about Snow White?
Thank you to all of, thank you to you, to all to let me be with you. It's been a pleasure. Every time I see Snow White, and I have also the film on Super 8 and also the 16 millimeters. I have a Technicolor copy of it, and every time I watch it, I say that, wow, that's a miracle. No shorter than a miracle. And,
Yeah.
Do you have any Zaccanini's?
Yes?
Do you have any Zaccanini sculptures, figures?
Oh, yeah. Yes, yeah, but that's the one I have on my desk.
Oh, look at that.
Rubber.
Just happen to have.
That's what I want to see.
White. And they're very popular, very collectible in Italy.
Here too.
In Venice, there is a museum of all this rubber stuff.
Wow.
And the Snow White is one of the most popular character made in rubber, because I think in Italy we always found that Snow White is something we treasure.
Well, the most valuable thing for American collectors we can't find here is Italian, the Zaccanini.
Yes,
figures.
Zaccanini is very, very famous, but I don't like very much the face of the Zaccanini.
Oh, really? Okay.
Snow White, because she's not so. Because I prefer very much the Capodimonte figures made by made by Argenton. In the Lawrence figures, they made the table of Snow White eating with the doves. It's very, very beautiful.
So basically, Nunciante, what you're saying is that Snow White needs a facelift or something like that.
I think I always thought that the drawing of Snow White is so beautifully done in the film that no statue can represent it.
Close one, when it comes close, is
the beauty of Snow White comes from the movement of all the very, very little figures I've seen. They resemble the actual Snow White that we see in the movie. I think it's a miracle.
That's true. Carmen, thoughts?
Well, I am gonna say something that's already been said. I believe it's a masterpiece and a miracle. And it marked the beginning of an era. It's a product of a genius, and I think that it's not only how did the story move from the Grimm's brother that is very dark to something that everybody could watch, to the technological developments, to the way the story, the animation, the designs. I think that it doesn't matter from which point you look at it, it's beautiful and it's perfect. So it's yes, I don't know what it's like. I have no more words to talk about it. Thank you.
No problem. Debbie?
I would just say, I put myself in their shoes way back when, and how incredibly risky and brave and crazy those decisions were to put everything on the line to basically forge this whole industry, and how it took off. You go way back when, that was, incredibly brave. And I'm so glad they did it. And again, if anyone wants to communicate with me, I'm on Wonderful World of Animation, and I'm on wwagallery.com. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me as part of this. It's been a great honor. And if anyone wants to send me images of what they have, I'd love to take a look. I love looking at other people's pieces, or if you're looking for anything or want to learn more about collecting, please look me up. I'd love to help.
Yeah, here we have two wonderful people who will help, will assist you, with your needs in terms of collecting, Gustavo and Debbie. But before you sell anything, send me a picture so I may take it. But anyway, I just wanted to say, please don't forget to like us. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. And more importantly, I'm going to throw a question, and hopefully you can answer by email to our email, which is cartoonresearchersandeducators@gmail.com. If you are able to answer this question, you will be receiving a gift at home. So don't forget to send us your details. So the question is the following. There is only one glitch, one little mistake in the movie of Snow White. Even Disney acknowledged that small glitch. If you know which was that glitch, and you can send it to us by email, we will announce the winner next time. Oh my God, Gustavo already knows that. And
I know.
I'm writing email right now. I'm typing it right now.
Don't say anything, anyone.
I don't know if that is.
No, don't say anything. So there is just this small little glitch that actually you can only find if you watch the movie frame by frame. So I would like you to write us, tell us, your questions that you may have for next session, regarding Pinocchio. And also, please reply to this question. And hey, Debbie, will you be able to send a polo shirt or something to the winner?
I'll have to check to see if I have any left, but I would absolutely be able to send something.
All right, sounds like a plan.
I would be able to check my archive.
Next time will be Gustavo, the one who will be sending something. So you get ready. So anyway, guys, thank you, Steve. Thank you, Gustavo, Debbie, Carmen, Nunciante. Thank you so very much for taking the time. Thank you for watching us.
Thank you.
And I do hope to see you all very soon.
Happy holidays.
Pleasure. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ciao.